Hello YouTube and welcome to this video. We'll first go through the basics of Picross, and then I'll show you step by step how I solved this particular puzzle, and hopefully that'll show you some of the logic that you need to have success when you're trying to solve some on your own. First up, what is Picross, a Picross puzzle? Well, it's in this case it's a 10 by 10 grid where you have numbers on top of the columns and on the side of the rows, and those numbers are hints that show you how many squares you need to fill in that row or column, and in the end you'll get a pixelated picture. So that's the goal you're trying to achieve. And it's very important to note that the numbers are in order. So for example, for this row it's a 1 and a 4. So if you have the 4 here, you can have 1 here or here, but not here. The numbers are in order, it's very important. It's also important to note that like here, for example, here it's a 2 and 3 and 1. You always need to have at least one space between them. So like this, for example, you cannot have, this can't be the 3 and then the 1 here. That's not possible. At least one space. And one thing that's very important to understand, especially if you're new, is you're never supposed to guess. Never, never, never. Sometimes it may feel like, okay, the only way out of this situation is to guess between this or this option or this option. But there's always a logical next step. Always. So if you feel like you're stuck, it's either because you don't get the logic yet, or maybe you did something wrong. But you should never guess. There's always a logical next step. And the most basic skill you're gonna need to solve a Picross puzzle will be counting. Say for example in this row, now it's a 5, but let's pretend that it is an 8 instead. Then what you'll do, and this is the most basic thing, you'll use this all the time. I use these markers to count. Then I would count 8 from the top, because we're pretending it's an 8. And then now I'll just go over here to show it, but it's still for this column. Then we count 8 from the bottom. That's 8. And then we have these 6 here. They overlap, so then you would fill them out. Okay, that's the most basic skill you're gonna need for Picross, and that goes for single numbers like this 5, and it could be, well, you'll see when we solve this puzzle, it's also for everything. So like if there's a 2 and a 3 and a 1 in this row, you count and you go the other way. It's exactly the same. That's a very basic skill you need. Okay. But when you count, it's very important that you do it the right way. So for example, this row that has a 1 and a 3 and a 1, if you count this one way and then you count from the other side, 1, 3 and 1, you see there's an overlap here and an overlap here. But that doesn't mean you can fill it out. The overlap has to be like the 3 need to overlap the 3, you see? In order for you to fill it out, otherwise you'll get it wrong. Okay, very important. With that out of the way, I think we should just start solving the puzzle and see how we do. And I'll explain step by step what I do, and hopefully, you know, I'm not gonna run into every kind of logic that you use in a Picross puzzle in this single puzzle, but hopefully it'll be enough to get you started. Okay, so what you'll usually do when you start a puzzle, you'll look for big numbers. Like if you had, this is a 10 by 10, so if you had a 10, that would be all the way, that you would fill an entire column or row. But otherwise, look for something where there's like a lot of numbers. So let's say we take this one, for example, and then we do like before, we count it, and I use the marker button to count. You can also do it in your head, but in this way I feel like I have everything under control. So that's the 2 and then at least one space. So you put one space and then you count to 5. And you go from the other way and you count to 5. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then it starts overlapping, so you fill it out. 3, 4, and 5. And then at least one space, and then you count to 2, so that's 1 and 2, so there's no overlap. But we got these 3, okay? So that's a start. And then usually you look, like if you look, when you've painted something in one direction, we took the row here, and we got 3, then we look at the columns that we've just filled some squares in to see if it helps us. So let's look at these, for example. These are like, you need a 1 first, and then at least, but we don't know where, but a 1, and then a space, and then a 5. So it needs to end in a 5, okay? So if we go 5 from the bottom, then you see that this is obviously part of the 5, because if it was the 1, and you know they need to be in order, so that would be the 1 and then a space, and then there's no room for the 5 down here, okay? So this is the 5, but even if we fill all these, we don't know if the 5 could be going, let's say the 5 could be going this way, 5 and a 1, okay? So we don't know if we need to fill any of these 3, but even if it goes the other way, then, you know, no matter what, we cannot, let's say we fill it this way, okay, but that's still only a 4, so no matter what, we need to fill this, because it's a 5. And that's also a very basic technique, so you know, okay, the last one's a 5, this is a 5, so you start counting from the edge, from the bottom here, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, it needs to go to at least here. And the same for this one, exactly the same. Okay. And something that is equally important, as right now we're filling the squares. That's our end goal, is to fill every square as marked by the numbers. But what is equally important in order to solve a puzzle is to mark with the X. And that's like when you have, like, this is a 2 and a 3, for example. Let's say that we found out that this was the 2, then it would be done. So we would put an X here and here. Okay. But in this case, it's not the 2. What we can see here is that, let's pretend that this is the 2, then we need at least one space, and then there's no room for the 3 on the other side. So this needs to be the 3. And since we've already filled 2, then we can see it cannot go any further than here. So no matter, and there's nothing after the 3. So no matter what we do, this will be a square. Okay, oh, sorry, not a square. This will be an X. Okay, we mark it with an X. And X's are equally important as filling out, because it gives us some clues. Let's say that, you know, this column is a 5, but let's pretend that this one was a 5, okay? Then by putting down this mark, just this single mark, we would know, okay, there's no room for a 5 down here, so we would be able to just fill the 5 up here. So putting down X's are very important, okay? Okay, so now let's look at something else. Let's take this column, for example. There are a lot of numbers here, and then we count it as I told you in the beginning. So that's a 1 and a 3 and a 2 and a 1. And as you see, we've actually filled the entire column by doing this. So there's no, yeah, this is basically what you need to do, because if you count it backwards, now I'm really, let's say, dumbing it down. I want to make sure that you understand, because yeah, if you count it backwards, it's exactly the same. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. So that's a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 1. So everything overlaps. So everything gets filled out. But let's say that it was a 1, 2, 2, 1 instead of 1, 3, 2, 1. Then it would be like 1, 2, 2, and 1. Okay. Then when you go backwards, it would be like this. So we would have overlap here, but this one is already filled, and an overlap here, so we would be able to fill this one. That's just an example. But yeah, let's move on. So that was a 3 and a 2 and a 1. So we fill out all of them. And then you see they get grayed out. Like if we don't put the last one, if we just start putting X's around these, it will gray out the 3 to show, okay, you finished the 3. You finished the 1, you finished the 2 and the 1 and everything. But then you put these marks here, as I told you, when to surround the squares that you filled, because that will help you a lot. Like for example here, now we have marked here and we know this is the 3, so there's only one place for it to go now, because we closed this end, so the 3 goes here. And then we have a 5, so that can go all the way down. We have 4 squares, but it can only go 4 up as well, so we can put an X here. Cannot go that far, okay? And with the X here, we see this row is a 4, so there's no room for it here. We put an X, and it needs to move at least 1, 2, 3, 4 in this direction, okay? And then, because we have 2, and the 4 would only be able to go to here, so we put X's here as well. For this column, this top one is a 1, so we put an X here. Let's see what we can do. Okay, for this row, it's a 1 and a 4. So if we say, is it possible for this to be the 1? Then we go 1, at least 1 space, 1, 2, 3. So there's no room for the 4. So this has to be part of the 4, okay? And if that's the case, then we can only go like 1, 2, 3, 4, and it cannot go all the way here. So we put an X again. Slowly working our way to getting the 1 for this column. We'll get there. Okay, let's see. And it's the same for this one. It's a 2 and a 4. You cannot have the 2 here and then the 4 here. There's no room. So this is the 4, and we put an X here as well. Let's see, what else have we got? We need to start counting some stuff, I think. Yeah. Let's try this one, for example. So I count 1, 2, 3 and 1. This is actually not so good. 1 space 1, 2, 3. We already have this one, so that was not a good one. Let's see. 2. It's no good. Okay, we take this row. So let's say we try to count it, okay? So we start with a 1 and at least 1 space, 1, 2, 3. And then 1 goes here. Then when we count from the other direction, we start with the 1 and then a single space, and then we try to do the 3. 1, 2, but then we meet an X, so there's no room. So from that we can deduct that the 3 needs to be on this side. And there's a 1 before it, so actually this is the only way it can go here. So we can actually just fill this in, okay? And then we see this for this column, that's a 2, so there's nothing we can do. And this is a 2 for this column, and this column has a 1 at the bottom, so it has to be this one. So we mark it with these X's. And by doing so, you'll see why they are so important, because then we can move to this row, we take a 2 and then a space, and then we cannot start the 4 here because there's an X, so we need to start it from here, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, and we go from the other direction. 1, overlap, 2, 3, overlap, 4, and then a single space, but we cannot start the 2 here because there's an X, so we start here, 1 and 2, there's an overlap. And this entire column is 1s, so we mark this with an X. This row starts with a 2, okay? So there's no room here, we mark it with an X as well. And then probably be a good idea to count this one. So we do 1, 2, space, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's all of it. Okay. And we have a 2 here, there's nothing to do. Let's see, what else? Okay, for this column, this is like another piece of logic, because we have two single ones here, okay? So let's say we fill this one. What happens? Then we have a 1, 2, 3, but this column only has 2s, so we know that we can mark this one. And since it only has 2s, then this needs to be a 2, and this needs to be a 2, okay? You put an X. And by putting this X, we get the 2 in this direction. And the 2 in this column as well. It keeps going. Usually you do like something in a row, then something in a column, something in a row, something in a column. That's usually how it goes. And then by getting this X, we can fill in this with the 2. And then you see it grays out the numbers, because now we have the 2 and the 1. That's everything for this row. So we mark the rest of it with X's. And that's helps us here. We do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, so it needs to go at least to here, okay? And the same for this one. And the same for this one, actually. And that gives us the 4 for this row, so we mark it with an X as well. And let's say we have these 4 ones, okay? When we had just this one, I don't know if we delete, yeah, if we delete this one, then none of the ones in this column are grayed out. That's because it doesn't know if it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and with nothing here, or if it's like 1, 2, and then 1 here. So it doesn't know which one this one is, so it's not possible to gray it out yet. But because we have the one on the bottom, and that's obviously the bottom one, and then this is the next one, so then it is able to gray out the numbers. So it'll help you in that way, okay? Let's see, for this column we have a 1 at the bottom, we did this one already, and then the next one from the bottom is a 2. We have an X and then one starting here, so that has to be a 2, okay? And then we mark it with an X as always, and that gave us the 2 in this row, which finishes it up. Then for this column we have the 3, so we count 1, 2, 3, and then from the bottom 1, 2, overlap, 3, overlap, okay? And it's always nice to fill out, if it's possible, fill out the squares along the sides, okay? The closer to the side the better, because that, just you see here we start with a 2, and because we have this on the side, there's only one way for it to go, and that's out. So we can do the 2, okay? We see this is a 1 for this row, so we mark it. Then for this column we still need to fill in 2 1s, and now we have a 1 here, so we shut that in with an X. Then there's only 1 square left for the last one, okay? And the same for this row with the 1 and the 4. We have the 4, we need the 1, and there's only 1 square left, so we fill in the 1, which gives us the 3 for this column. So we put in an X, then we can fill in the 2 for this row, put an X. And then for this column, for example, now we need 2 1s. So if we count it, it's like 1 here, 1 here. And then when we count from the bottom, there's no overlap here, but here we only have a single square, so there's only one possibility. That gives us another square for this 4, and then it can only go to here, so we mark this with an X. And it keeps going like this all the time. I don't know, maybe we can do, okay, for this one, for this row we still need a 3 and a 1, and the next one is a 3. So if we go 1, 2, 3, then if this was supposed to be the 1, then we needed a space, okay? So that means this is a part of the 3. Since it's a part of the 3, it cannot go any further than here, so we know no matter what, this will be an X, because there's no more numbers before the 3, okay? So we can mark this with an X, which means we then can fill out the 2 for this column, which finishes the 4 for this row. so we put this here. Let's see, what else do we have? Okay, for this one, for the 5 in this column, it can only extend to these two, so we mark this one with an X. And then for this row, we need to put in a 2. There's no room for it here. And also I see that this column we already have the 1, so I can actually put X's all the way down. And then for this row there's only 2 spaces left for the 2, so that's the only place they can go. And then the 1 and the 1 for these 2 columns, so we mark it with X's, which gives us the 3 and the 1 for this row. Okay. And then this one is only a 5, so we have 1 here and 3 here, but there's only a single number, so everything needs to be connected, so we put 1 here and mark the rest with X's. Then we have for this row a 1, and then 1, 2 and 3, okay, which gave us the 2 from here, and we need the 2 on the bottom. There's only 1 place for it to go, which also gives us the 4 for this row. So now we're getting close, okay? For this column we need the 5, there's only 1 space left, which gives us the 1 for this row. So we put in an X, and then we fill in the 5, and boom, we're done. Hopefully this helps you understand some of the logic of the game. I know it's not every part of it, but it should be enough to get you started with the basics of how you solve, or what exactly is the rules for solving it, and some of the logic that goes in. Okay, I'll do another video later for a 15 by 15 puzzle, so that will be some of the more advanced logic, but the same logic applies no matter the size of the puzzle. Okay, so it's really important to get the basics just hard-coded into your brain. Okay, if you have any comments, questions, leave them down below. Otherwise, just thank you for watching. I hope this helped you. So good luck and have fun with solving your own Picross puzzles. Bye.